What's up, friends? Welcome to my channel where we're doing music covers, original music, album reviews, song reviews, a little social commentary here and there, reactions, whatever the day calls for. If you like what you see here, please subscribe to the channel. If you have content on here, I will subscribe to you as well. I am all about supporting up-and-comers on here. Felt in the spirit of Halloween, we do something a little different and move into the most fall-like room in my house, my kitchen. Happy Halloween, everybody. Today we are getting into one of the most anticipated releases of the year for me, just based on the singles that I've heard. Polyphia's brand new album, Remember That You Will Die, that was released on Friday. Whenever the fourth single from this album was released, Ego Death featuring Steve Vai, I knew I wasn't going to have time to do a video on it, so I decided to just skip listening to it altogether and just wait for the album to come out and experience it along with the rest of the songs. So before this album came out, I only heard the three singles, Neurotica, Playing God, and ABC, and loved all three of those. Out of all the songs, the one that really has my interest peaked the most is the one where they are going to collaborate with Chino from Deftones, called Bloodbath. At this point, I have already heard all the songs off this album except that one. So I'm going to do a track-by-track review of this album and rate the album and all that. And then do a live reaction for Bloodbath. So let's get into this thing. The first track is called Genesis, and it features a hip-hop duo by the name of Brass Tracks. This song is a bold disclaimer that there's going to be some serious genre mashing going on here. We've got some really cool horn sections along with the typical Polyphia formula. It's a pretty cool opener. Number two, Playing God. Like many others, this is the first track I heard leading up to this album. And it's just incredible, man. And it showed me why I should take an interest in this group, because there are so many instrumental bands that just make these aimless, directionless songs that just basically exist as a vehicle for them to show off their talents. And you can tell from Playing God that Polyphia was on a mission to do quite the opposite of that. Like, the songwriting came first. It was a nice quick track, didn't overstay its welcome, showcased what everybody can do. Might be the first track ever that had a whistling kind of section in it, where I actually liked it. I kind of hate whistling in music, but they really made that work. Playing God was an incredible track, an incredible way to lead up to the excitement for this album. Number three, The Audacity, featuring Anomaly, a Canadian keyboardist and producer. Clay, their drummer, is the star of the show here. He plays an electronic drum kit on most of this album. This song could basically be described as the brutal murder of Clay's drum kit. Ridiculous, man. Great track. Number four, Reverie. This track is very much in the same vein as Neurotica. This one doesn't bring anything spectacular in terms of songwriting. It's very easy to kind of get lost in everything, but it's still a pretty good track nonetheless. It's a great display of all the members' talents in a nice little 4-minute package. Moving on. Number five, ABC, featuring Sophia Black. We've heard this one already. When I first listened to this song, I was so taken aback at what it ended up being. And I found some of the stuff she was doing kind of cringy at first, and really dug a lot of the stuff she was doing straight up early on. I gave that track an 8.5 out of 10. And now that it's set in and I've been listening to it a lot leading up to this release, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's just so awesome how much a band like this was able to successfully integrate a pop singer into their song. I mean, this thing was written perfectly. Everything's memorable. Everything's got the feel-good vibe. Sophia does a great job all through this. Like, once you get past the first listen where you're like, holy shit, this is a fucking pop song. It's actually really, really good. Really, really good. I would now consider ABC to be one of the top tracks on this album. Number six, Memento Mori, featuring Kill Station, a SoundCloud multi-instrumentalist. I'm not sure if he contributed anything aside from his vocals to this track, but it's pretty good. It's the typical Polyphia formula with some robotic sounding vocals from him sprinkled in to add the kind of like a futuristic kind of feel here. It's a pretty good track. Number 7, Fuck Around and Find Out, featuring Snot. This vocal feature wasn't really my cup of tea. This track kind of felt like a way of the band saying that even the most banal and mainstream kind of stuff that Zoomers are listening to these days could fit into this kind of music. Like at the time that I listened to this song, I was feeling like just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. But there's a track later in the album that kind of made me retract that view a little bit. It's just on this particular track. I didn't think it was done very well, and I would definitely consider this the lowest point of the album. Number 8, All Falls Apart. This is a very noisy interlude with some very loud, almost to the point of clipping, sounding horns over the usual guitar style that these guys typically play. It's just kind of there. Number 9, Neurotica. It was my favorite of the singles when I heard them, and it's my favorite track on this album. It is just so fucking good, man. Every melody, every riff, the songwriting, just everything about this is just the best of what Polyphia can do, all wrapped up into a 3-minute and 15-second package. There's just so much to say about this track. If you're trying to turn on somebody to this band who doesn't know about them already, this is definitely the track I would recommend you start them off with. Compared to Playing God, this one had a lot more bass guitar work. Gotta love that. It's just an amazing track, and I would say it's the best track of this album. Unless the one with Chino blows this one out of the water. Haven't heard that one yet, but at this point of listening, Neurotica, I would say, is the best track. This next track, I kind of have to reference my notes a little bit because I have a lot to say about it. This is Chimera featuring Lil West. Maybe the Snot feature was a failed experiment because this track also features an auto-tuney mumble rap style guest, and it worked so much better here. I loved where he came in. It sounded great. I also like that we got some detuned, genty riffs in this one with the gain turned up, even if it was drowning a wall of effects. I wish these guys weren't so afraid to get heavy with it, because I would say the only thing that this track would have benefited from more is if it really had a pop-in, heavy, low thing right at the end with not the E-kit, but like, you know, an actual drum set and just the distortion turned up to 11. Either way, though, I would say this was definitely a top track. We're about to do a reaction here to Bloodbath, so I'm going to skip over that one and go to the closer, Ego Death, featuring Steve Vai. First thing I want to say about this video is just how badass both Tim's guitar and Clay's bass are. I mean, look at those fucking things. First, Steve Vai's contributions were a little bit underwhelming compared to what Tim and Scott were doing, but at the end, the three of them do something all together, and it just sounds so glorious. The producer did a great job here of getting all three of their guitars in the mix equally. It's not always an easy feat. It was a really good way to close this thing out. Aside from Bloodbath, which I haven't heard yet because we're going to be reacting to it here shortly, I would say that as a whole, Polyphia took a very unique approach to seeing what kind of outside genres they could mold into a progressive rock framing. I would say for the most part, it worked. If I was going to say anything negative about this album, I would just say that they kind of use really samey scales, like even though they're shredding all the time and playing really intricate stuff all the time, the timing is like very intricate and everything, a lot of it still kind of sounded samey, like they were playing the same notes, and I was kind of able to tell where they were going to go before they went there. I definitely thought Fuck Around and Find Out was kind of the dud of this album. I would say that these guys kind of depended a little bit too much on the features for the diversity. Like they brought in all these features from outside genres, but they were basically just kind of singing behind the same old Polyphia formula. And it all kind of just depended on how good the songwriting was on the particular track that they were featured on. The only other negative thing I would say is I think there was a couple missed opportunities to be really heavy in some parts, especially on Chimera. There's a hell of a lot more positive things to say about this album, though. Out of all the features, I'm still going to say that Sophia Black in ABC was the top one. They did such a good job of putting her influence into what they do in such a masterful way. All of the singles leading up to this album were top tracks, and they were very smart to release the ones that they did. I would still say Neurotic is my favorite track on the whole thing. Shout out again to Chimera for making the trap hip hop thing kind of work the best out of all the tracks. All the horn stuff was really good. Like the guest in the opener did a great job with all those horn sections. The drum production was really good, and something I really want to point out about the drum production is most of it is played on an E-kit to give it kind of this trap hip hop kind of sound, but you never feel like you're listening to a programmed beat. Like, you can tell it still has an organic feel from a real drummer. Like, I would never question for a second if these were programmed or not. Like, they did a really good job of making that work too. And this album was a perfect length too, you know, not too short, not too long for what they do. All in all, I'm going to give this thing an 8.5 out of 10. The 11 out of 12 tracks that I've heard on this album as a whole, so let's get into the one I have not heard, and then I cannot wait to hear Bloodbath featuring Chino Marino from Deftones. Let's get into it. Okay, so this song doesn't seem to have an actual music video, just kind of like a visualizer kind of thing. So I'm not really going to bother with putting the video in the song like I typically do. We're just going to stick with the track for this one. But without further ado, let's get into Polyphia's Bloodbath featuring Chino Marino.
Watch me
actually going to change the rating of this album over the song. It's a 9 now. Like, god damn, that was so fucking good. I love the way they integrated Chino into this. And I feel like they kind of broke out of their traditional playing style and the scales they usually go to, and some of the things that I felt made this album sound a little bit samey musically. Like, this song is kind of like a diamond in the rough here. Like, it's not like the others. And I'm glad I waited till last to listen to this, because this was such a way to cap off the listening experience of this album, which I've been anticipating for quite some time. This is a top track for sure. For sure. You know, Chimera is really good, and I would say Neurotic is a top track, Playing God is a top track, ABC is a top track, and this is a top track. Those are the top 5 for me right there. Other than Fuck Around and Find Out and All Falls Apart being a little bit fillerish, I think they pretty much hit it out of the park with this one. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This track here is so good. So good. I hope they collaborate together again in the future. I'll be listening to songs off this album for weeks to come, months to come, for sure. Great job to Polyphia here. That's all I really got to say about this one, guys. Until next time, thanks for watching.